one activity to another activity. So the mobile users are generally very problematic users. So if you make them wait on a screen for the response coming from a server for more than 3-4 seconds, they will just close the app and go back to the Candy Crush, because they like to play games rather than have the application running which are slow. So tools like this, which give you all these parameters right on remote devices, right on your desktop, can help you resolve all your testing problems. Any questions? Sure.
So had open source tools, Selenium, SQLite, and so on. So Selenium, they started off with an open source project, but now it has become almost the de facto standard of any web-based application. This was going well until the previous evolution of having proper websites. Now we had website only on our smart devices. We had to customize it here. So what sort of solutions would fit in here in this space? So we had Android coming into play, iOS coming into play, and Windows coming into play, and we had various others, BlackBerry, Nokia X, and so on. So they had, each one had its own customizable interfaces, and we had to suit our application test framework into these. So we use various securely. Have people use securely for your? Very good. So here we would be looking at, we would be capturing the screenshots, and we would be doing a comparison of images. So this really plays a very important role. For example, I was consulting a gaming company. So here we did have an option for going and detecting any of the objects. It was a flex-based application. So we had to use some of the image comparison tools. So options were like Genie. Genie was one of the tools which supports in specific all the flex Adobe products. And another option was the Securely, where we had images running on the screen and it was all high resolution images. Securely was really helpful for us. And then of course we have the Robotium, which is a evolved framework. They claim themselves as a sister concern of Selenium. So which means that it follows almost the same steps as in Selenium. It's easy for anyone who has worked on Selenium to switch to Robotium very quickly. And then we have Calabash. The evolution here was that people were thinking in terms of there was test-driven development at some point of time, and then the shift now focused on behavioral-driven development, which would mean that as a user, I want to perform my testing actions in such a way that it almost mimics what the end user is going to perform. So if I can have this correlation between how an end user performs and how I am going to do, it's easier for me to verify beforehand to do it. So Calabash is one of the behavioral driven development tool. Of course you have Cucumber and so on. So this is the current automation solution. Now why open source? So we saw there were few of the commercial tools as well, but why open source? Do we even really want to invest in open source? There are various problems of course, but why open source? Do you use open source by any chance? Or do you use commercial tools? Any open source tools that you use in your organization? Selenium. Any others apart from Selenium? For mobile, do you use any tool for mobile? Any open source tool? Securely and Robot. Anything else? Okay, but why do you use it? Now that's the question. Why should we even invest in an open source tool? Of course, there is going to be a lot of investment for you to maintain the code, and also if you end up in some trouble, you would need to go and fix it. So, do we still need to invest? The answers could be that it uses the flexibility to go and perform whatever we need. We can customize it according to our requirement. So this has been one of the biggest USPs for us to go for open source. And the other one is its ability to interleave with various other open source tools. So for example, if we have Securely at one point, and if we have Selenium at one point, can they speak to each other? We can make them speak to each other. Even if the original founders, they didn't intend for it to speak to each other, since it's open source and we know the underlying platform, we can make it speak to each other. So this session is going to be about how we make each of these different tools speak to each other. So that's going to be the session what we are going to cover. So taking the PC into consideration, our normal automation scenario, how it has happened till now, we use some automation tool like Selenium, or it could be anything else. And then we have the DSL, domain specific library, which we build, which would be the function library. So Selenium already provides a set of host of libraries for us. It could be for us to go and click somewhere or enter some text, but we modify this by bringing our own functions into play, where we go and change it to, for example, I'm doing a banking application, so I would want to customize this automation suite to my banking application for a specific module. So each of these will go into this domain specific library, which we have been doing, nothing new on this. And then UI object repository, we need some way of identifying the object. So any automation, it has the same fundamental that you would need something to go and identify each of the objects. You create a map out of it. It can be a GUI map, or it could be any other object repository way that you use. And then you would be using these elements to go and you'll be utilizing them. You'll be performing some action on them, how an end user would be doing. It could be a click, it could be a type, tap, swipe, and so on. And then this would be the layer which would be written by an automation engineer, who would be probably from the development team or from the testing team. And then normally, and then we have the second layer coming into play, and this layer would be the test case layer, which we probably write as testers, or probably as test automation engineers. We would be writing the test scripts, which would probably equate to your manual test. Whatever manual test you had, you'll be writing your own test cases here, and this would be running on a SUT. So this has been the PC scenario which we have been following. Coming to the mobile scenario, what you see here is almost these two layers, they remain same. So we have built again domain specific library separately, and we are building this UI object repository separately, and test cases again we are rebuilding it to suit only our tablet and mobile application, and we are using those specific tools which are going to suit for our applications. And here, since Selenium is not going to support any sort of mobile application, so what we thought is either go for Selendroid or go for Robotium and so on. So these are the various ways in which we are doing. So as you see, there is a lot of repeatability that we are doing. So we are spending time in creating two parallel suites which can probably coexist had there been a hybrid framework. So is there any other way? Now apart from these, we have also seen writing the test cases which corresponds to a test cases. The newer trend, as I was discussing a little while earlier, we are going for the behavioral driven development. So Cucumber is one of the good tools. Probably you can explore it. It easily integrates with Selenium. So that's the beauty of Cucumber. So people who are interested, just to give a quick understanding of what it means for those of you who are new. Here we are just mentioning what the feature is. So normally business analysts, they think in terms of how an end user would perform with a specific item. So I give the feature, for example, in order to keep track of companies, as a user I want to do so and so, and the scenario is given. I need to create something on the application, given, when, then. So given an application, I want to perform so and so that I get so and so. So this is almost similar for people who have been exposed to test driven development. You would see that as a user I want to do so and so with so and so. So all these remain same except the part that there you would be handling the classes and the objects very specifically, but here you would be translating this set of acceptance scenarios into your Selenium language. So it's as simple as that. Probably we can have a little more on Cucumber at a later point of time, but now to move ahead, again looking at the space of how we have involved, we have the native application. So we started on a single platform with a full capability for it to interface with any of the apps. So if you take your mobile, for example, there is a SMS which is coming, or a telephony. So each of these activities can be managed whenever you write an app with a native language. So that would be a native application. Then we came with a hybrid application which interfaces, we wrap it with a web layer so that it can be easily opened and so on, and HTML5. So these are the various plethora of devices that are currently seen in the mobile market. So the complexity here comes in the form that there are the applications are different for the same set of scenarios. So I want to open google.com. It can be either on a PC, or it can either be on a phone or on a tablet, but I'm still opening google.com. Is there any way for me to reuse these automation strategies which I have already created at my office? So this is what I'm going to look at. So we are using almost the same features and same business action. So even here I want to perform a search, even there I want to perform a search. It's going to be similar, but still I'm using different tools to automate. At one point I'm using Robotium securely, at another point I'm using Selenium. I'm just speaking about open source tools, but if you take any commercial tool, probably the vendor has made much more enhancements to it for it to interface even between mobile and with PC. But with open source we lack this flexibility. So this is where we are going to talk into, and we also need to build a test tool vocabulary. For example, if you see the previous slide, we are building this domain specific library into picture, and this varies between PC and mobile, which means that people who are writing this test cases or scripts, they need to understand each of these domain scripting functions which we have written in the previous layer. So which would mean that this test tool vocabulary has to be different, and it becomes a little confusing for us to do it over a period of time to maintain the entire application. So, and also test runner remains different for each of these. There will be a different runner for Selenium, different runner for any open source which runs on mobile. So how do we reduce the effort, time and cost that we are investing onto it? So that is the biggest challenge that what lies ahead for us. So just to give you all other open source tools so that you can explore them and see them what suits you better in your organization. We start with Monkey Talk. Monkey Talk is a very good open source tool. Again, they also have their own commercialized platform which you can make use of, and here they support native, mobile, hybrid, both iOS and Android. So which would mean that you have a lot of options to go cross-platform. You can explore this from Gorilla Logic, and they provide almost a neat interface between these. The next solution would be Frank. Frank is based on Cucumber, and they write it for iOS automation on Mac. So anything with iOS, Frank would be probably one of the option. Next comes Robotium. So Robotium, as I said it's a sister of Selenium. They say that we are almost similar to Selenium. So if you know them, if you know Selenium, you can easily migrate to us. So even here you just create an object of what Robotium provides, and you can call various of its functions. So it's only for Android. That's the only drawback that what we have. Both native and hybrid is what it supports. So the entire ecosystem, how it lies is, in case if your organization, for example, I was working with one organization where we were developing apps for Android, for iOS, which were in parallel along with the PC based application, which means we had different tools into picture. We had Robotium, which we were using, and at the same time we were using UI Automator for maintaining all iOS scripts, since we wanted to make use of Apple provided scripts for Mac. It's much easier for me to interface with JavaScript, so we were using this, and we had various solutions, and your solution could be much more complex, like you'll be using securely at one point, you'll be using Selenium at one point, and now the latest entry, Appium. Have you used Appium in your company? Okay, it's a very good tool. Again, make a note of it, at least try to explore this. Better than Robotium, I would say. So you can probably explore Appium. If time permits, we'll just have a quick demo of Appium as well. And of course we have Robotium and Selendroid. Selendroid is very much specific to Android. So if you compare between Appium and Selenium, which is better, if your test cases are very much specific to Android, go for Selendroid rather than Appium. It's much easier for you to invoke all the interfaces. Now how we have done with the setup is, apart from all these in consideration. These are the automation tools, but these are not the only automation tools that what we have. We have to take into consideration even the continuous integration which happens in our organization in the project flow. So the continuous integration can be in terms of all of these or one of these. So you might be having Maven, which is going to be the build tool, and you might be using one of the automation tools, Robotium or something else, and then you might be using Jenkins or Hudson. It can be any other continuous integration environment. This is very much essential because we are in agile mode, so we want to do a lot of automation whereby the builds could be sent out into production at a matter of few days of testing. So you would see that almost all the companies, including Amazon, we have very strict timelines of launch to market. So it will normally be 2 to 3 days. Any of our code, you could see it in production. So that would be the agility that what we require. So this continuous integration environments, they play a vital role for us to push the build into production by doing very minimal testing, very minimal manual testing. Rather, we have various checks at each one of the stages. So these gatekeepers, they find out as many bugs as possible, and this is possible only with CA. So our framework, what we need to do has to take care of even this continuous integration framework as well, because we have lot of these tests, Robotium tests running in say Jenkins environment on a headless machine, which would mean that you won't even have a GUI where you would see the application. Rather, it would be running on Linux based machine without even having a GUI on it. So we have to take into consideration this as well. So Robotium, this is the website in case people have interest to see. I don't think you would be able to see the code, but nevertheless it looks very similar to Selenium. Just wanted to show you that how it looks like. And Jenkins, probably you might be using Jenkins, though you might not be actually using Jenkins, you might not be configuring Jenkins, but your organization might be using Jenkins or some other